Welcome to LFN News, a production of LFN Media, bringing you the latest in celebrity news, with specific analysis to keep you in the know of what is going on around you. I know it may sound a little over-optimistic to argue that R. Kelly will be home free for Easter of 2024, a little over a year from now, especially given the fact that we actually won't get to know R. Kelly's sentence in the just concluded Chicago trial until February next year, but still, with all the facts on table, it's inevitable that he will beat all of the pending charges against him and walk home free by April 2024. Well, truth be told, there is a bit of anxiety around what sentence he will be receiving from Judge Harry come February, but we should also keep in mind that this just concluded Chicago trial was a real blessing for the R&B king, noting that on top of the fact that he won over half of the counts against him in the indictment, his co-defendants were also acquitted, evidently nullifying the racketeering charges that were imposed on him in the New York trial. Also noting that the Chicago sentence will without doubt be an appealable sentence, given the counts that he was found guilty on are in relation to the tapes, whose authenticity is still a contentious issue given Judge Harry rejected defense's proposal to have a forensics team examine them. Simply put, R. Kelly's taste of freedom will have very little to do with whether he is actually guilty or not, which would have been a much lengthy process, but a lot with the fact that the government had used the wrong strategy at each of the trials against R. Kelly, and this also has much to say about the intentions that were behind all the allegations. There is a common wise saying that, "Don't bite off more than you can chew." That simply means taking on more than you can handle, a situation we have probably all been guilty of at a point in our lives. Can be a disastrous venture, and this is a mistake that will cost the government more than one can imagine, and resultantly win R. Kelly's freedom back, much sooner than we all can expect. Although R. Kelly's New York trial was cost by the incompetent legal team, one could argue that the prosecutors were equally incompetent and remotely foreseeing. Yes, you could argue that they got their way, winning on all counts and attracting a hefty sentence, even way beyond what they had pleaded for. But what does all this mean? Well, the one thing that the prosecutors in R. Kelly's New York trial will never forget is their decision to bring into play, violation of the Mann Act and racketeering charges, their main game plan and their far-reaching and overcharging strategy, which R. Kelly's lead defense attorney Jennifer Bonjean had already smelt, even before she joined the team. Let's face it, R. Kelly should never have been found guilty in New York in the first place, but even with the fact that he was, makes an appeal for R. Kelly against the verdict and sentence in New York a sure win. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We do know that all the prosecutors had to show for their enterprise allegations against Kelly was a mere soft board with mastheads of R. Kelly's former employees pinned to it, with R. Kelly's in the center. There was no evidence whatsoever to prove that R. Kelly actually had an enterprise, but prejudice ruled and the verdict was made. The only hope for prosecution would come over a year later, when the Chicago trial, that incorporated two of R. Kelly's former employees as co-defendants in the case, with hopes that if found guilty, would be proof enough that an enterprise truly existed, something that would put R. Kelly in incomprehensible trouble, having lost all the hope of a successful appeal. But, to the surprise of the entire prosecution, the Chicago case ended up in an unexpected mixed verdict, with the jury finding both co-defendants not guilty, having them walk out free. This completely shuttered any remote chances of a win for the New York prosecutors, who must now be having sleepless nights, knowing R. Kelly will most definitely be cleared of those far-reaching charges they wrongly imposed on him. The Chicago trial itself did not work out as planned in the government's endeavors to find R. Kelly guilty of similar unfounded allegations that they had thought they had a fighting chance at, having underestimated the experience and skill of R. Kelly's legal team, led by Jennifer Bonjean. So where is all this confidence of a complete acquittal in less than 2 years coming from? You may ask. Well, in addition to the prosecutors' mistakes in the New York trial already shared, the Chicago prosecutors themselves make even graver mistakes of their own. Jennifer Bonjean rightly put it while making her press statement, right after the jury's verdict at the Dirksen Federal Building downtown Chicago. She said the prosecutors would have to go back and think through, and answer the big question of whether they used the right strategy in that particular case or not. Well, that stressed the first mistake that was made by prosecution in this trial, deciding to include counts that they very well knew had a very slim possibility of making it. This won R. Kelly favor among the jury, which also greatly influenced the jury's general perception of R. Kelly, and will also undoubtedly influence the upcoming sentencing, as Judge Harry has a lot at stake now. In the prosecutor's bid to overcharge Kelly, they also called up many witnesses to the stand, many of whom had not even been fully briefed, and they ended up saying more than they probably should have, resultantly incriminating others and equally compromising their own reputations. The decision to grant the witnesses immunity deals was also a visible blunder, which greatly compromised their reputation and credibility, having been given a ticket to lie on the stand. It's no wonder some went ahead to even embarrass themselves over basic lies like their own age at the time they met R. Kelly, and this greatly compromised their credibility. Another grave error made in the Chicago trial came from the least expected of places, the judge himself. Well, it had become apparent that there were prejudiced tendencies in presiding Judge Harry Leinenweber even earlier on in the trial, but he had been tactful enough to try and cover them up. But he probably made the biggest blunder when he rejected a request by defense to have a forensics expert look at the alleged tapes that were at the center of the trial. Well, we all understand where his fears must have been coming from, but his decision not to allow one that would confirm the authenticity of the said tapes and also testify on the same, made all the guilty counts against R. Kelly in the Chicago trial very appealable. How unfortunate for prosecution. Judge Harry may never know the actual extent of his mistake, but prosecution will surely have its fair share of the blame, once R. Kelly appeals and works his way to freedom. These are some of the facts that leave us convinced that R. Kelly's days of freedom are not far ahead of us. To even make matters worse for the government, prosecutors in the Cook County cases, that had been shelved following the New York and Chicago state cases, have already developed cold feet about pushing on with the charges out of fear of double jeopardy. In the just concluded status hearing, Tenney McCoy Cummings, an assistant state's attorney, tried to hide the actual situation on ground and alleged that prosecutors were now ordering and analyzing the transcripts of Kelly's Chicago federal trial, which ended in mid-September, which should supposedly assist them in submitting the proper motions in the county cases. However, based on the fact that their central witness for these charges is actually Jane, the same key witness from the just concluded Chicago trial, this surely come out as double jeopardy, and should prosecution yet again make a mistake of going through with the charges, will surely find them even more embarrassed with a quick acquittal from the judge. That's all we had for you today. Please let us know in the comment section below whether you too believe that R. Kelly will be home in time for his 2024 Easter celebrations. We value your honest opinion. Thank you for watching LFN News, a production of LFN Media, giving you another view of issues at hand. To get notified whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now and hit the notification icon, and remember to give us your comment on the subject matter below.